entire government was on alert that there was tracking of people who meant to do harm in this country, and that some of that harm was focused on our airlines and our aircraft. Did you take additional measures at that time to secure the airlines?
Did not impose, that I recall, additional specific measures.
You did not?
Not that I recall. I may be wrong about that.
In the spring and summer of 2001, when, as our briefings and our testimony to us have indicated, the hair of the intelligence community was on fire, given the nature of the warnings that we were getting. Not specific as to what would happen, but that something was about to happen. A, were you aware of those warnings? And I guess you were gone by then, is that right, Admiral Flynn? So I'll put that question to Director Mano. Were you aware of that state of affairs?
Yes, and as I said, we also issued information circulars regarding those.
Did you advise or advocate any further steps than issuing the directives or security circulars that you issued?
Again, the role of intelligence is to provide the intelligence and not to direct or make specific security recommendations.
Although bin Laden, Mohammed Atef, and Khalid Sheikh Mohammed initially contemplated using established al-Qaeda members to execute the planes operation, the late 1999 arrival in Kandahar of 4 aspiring jihadists from Germany suddenly presented a more attractive alternative. The Hamburg group shared the anti-U.S. fervor of the other candidates for the operation, but added the enormous advantage of fluency in English and familiarity with life in the West, based on years that each member of the group had spent living in Germany. Not surprisingly, Mohammed Atef, Ramzi bin al-Shibh, Marwan al-Shehi, and Ziad Jarrah would all become key players in the 9/11 conspiracy. Mohammed Atef was born on September 1st, 1968, in Kafr el-Sheikh in Egypt, to a middle-class family headed by his father, an attorney. After graduating from Cairo University with a degree in architectural engineering in 1990, Atef worked as an urban planner in Cairo for a couple of years. In the fall of 1991, he asked a German family he had met in Cairo to help him continue his education in Germany. They suggested he come to Hamburg, invited him to live with them there, at least initially. After completing a course in German, Atef traveled to Germany for the first time in July of 1992. He resided briefly in Stuttgart, and then in the fall of 1992, moved to Hamburg to live with his host family. After enrolling at the University of Hamburg, he promptly transferred into the city engineering and planning course at the Technical University of Hamburg-Harburg, where he would remain registered as a student until the fall of 1999. He appears to have applied himself fairly seriously to his studies, at least in comparison to his jihadist friends, and actually received his degree shortly before traveling to Afghanistan. In school, Atef came across as a very intelligent and reasonably pleasant, with an excellent command of the German language. When Atef arrived in Germany, he appeared religious, but not fanatically so. This would change, especially as his tendency to assert leadership became increasingly pronounced. According to Ramzi bin al-Shibh, as early as 1995, Atef sought to organize a Muslim student association in Hamburg. In the fall of 1997, he joined a working group at the Al-Quds Mosque in Hamburg, a group designed to bridge the gap between Muslims and Christians. Atef proved to be a poor bridge because of his abrasive and increasingly dogmatic personality. But among those who shared his beliefs, Atef stood out as a decision maker. Atef's friends during this period remember him as a charismatic, intelligent, persuasive, and albeit intolerant of dissent. In his interactions with other students, Atta voiced virulently anti-Semitic and anti-American opinions, ranging from condemnations of what he described as a global Jewish movement centered in New York City that supposedly controlled the financial world and the media, to polemics against governments of the Arab world. To him, Saddam Hussein was an American stooge set up to give Washington an excuse to intervene in the Middle East. Within his circle, Atta advocated violent jihad. He reportedly asked one individual close to the group if he was ready to fight for his belief and dismissed him as too weak for jihad when the person declined. On a visit home to Egypt in 1998, Atta met one of his college friends. According to this friend, Atta had changed a great deal, had grown a beard, and had obviously adopted fundamentalism by that time. Ramzi bin Ashib was born on May 1st, 1972 in Gail Bever in Yemen. There does not seem to be anything remarkable about his family or even his early background. A friend who knew bin Ashib in Yemen remembers him as religious, but not too religious. From 1987 to 1995, bin Ashib worked as a clerk for the International Bank of Yemen. He first attempted to leave Yemen in 1995 when he applied for a U.S. visa. After his application was rejected, he went to Germany and applied for asylum under the name Ramzi Omar, who claimed to be a Sudanese citizen seeking asylum. While his asylum petition was pending, bin Ashib lived in Hamburg and associated with individuals from several mosques there. In 1997, after his asylum application was denied, bin Ashib went home to Yemen but returned to Germany shortly thereafter under his true name, this time registering as a student in Hamburg. Bin Ashib continually had academic problems, failing tests and cutting classes. He was expelled from one school in September of 1998. According to bin Ashib, he and Mohammed Atef first met at a mosque in Hamburg in 1995. The two men became close friends and became identified with their shared extremist outlook. Like Atta, by the late 1990s, bin Ashib was decrying what he perceived to be a Jewish world conspiracy. He proclaimed that the highest duty of every Muslim was to pursue jihad and that the highest honor was to die during the jihad. Despite his rhetoric, however, bin Ashib presented a more amicable figure than the austere Atta, and was known within the community as being sociable, extroverted, polite, and adventuresome. In 1998, bin Ashib and Atta began sharing an apartment in the Hamburg section of Hamburg. Together with a young student from the United Arab Emirates named Marwan al-Shehi, who also lived in Hamburg. Marwan al-Shehi was born on May 9, 1978 in Ras Al Khaimah in the United Arab Emirates, whose father, who died in 1997, was a prayer leader at the local mosque. After graduating from high school in 1995, al-Shehi joined the Emirati military and received half a year of basic training before gaining admission to a military scholarship program that would fund his continued study in Germany. Al-Shehi first entered Germany in April of 1996. After sharing an apartment in Bonn for 2 months with 3 other scholarship students, al-Shehi moved in with a German family with whom he resided for several months before moving into his own apartment. During this period, al-Shehi came across as very religious, praying 5 times a day. Friends who remember him as convivial and a regular guy, wearing Western clothes and occasionally renting cars for trips to Berlin, France, and the Netherlands. As a student, al-Shehi was less than a success. Upon completing a course in German, he enrolled at the University of Bonn in a program for technical, mathematical, and scientific studies. In June of 1997, he requested a leave from his studies, citing the need to attend to unspecified problems in his home country. Though the university denied his request, al-Shehi left anyway, and consequently was compelled to repeat the first semester of his studies. In addition to having academic difficulties at this time, al-Shehi appeared to have become more extreme in his practice of his faith. For example, he specifically avoided restaurants that cooked or served alcohol. In late 1997, he applied for permission to complete his course in Hamburg, a request apparently motivated by his desire to join Mohammed Atef and Ramzi bin al-Shibh. Just how and when the three of them first met remains unclear, although they seem to know each other already when al-Shehi relocated to Hamburg in early 1998. Atef and bin al-Shibh moved into his apartment in April. The transfer to Hamburg did not help al-Shehi's academic progress. He was directed by the scholarship program administrators at the Emirati embassy to repeat his second semester starting in August of 1998, but this time back in Bonn, Germany. Al-Shehi initially flouted this directive, however, and did not re-enroll at the University of Bonn until the following January, barely passing his course there. By the end of July of 1999, he had returned to Hamburg, flying to study shipbuilding at the Technical University, and more significantly, residing once again with Mohammed Atef and Ramzi bin al-Shibh in an apartment at 54 Marienstrasse. After al-Shehi moved in with Mohammed Atef and Ramzi bin al-Shibh, his evolution toward Islamic fundamentalism became more pronounced. A fellow Emirati student who came to Hamburg to visit al-Shehi noticed he no longer lived as comfortable as before. Al-Shehi now occupied an old apartment with a roommate, had no television, and wore inexpensive clothes. When asked why he was living so frugally, al-Shehi responded that he was living the way the Prophet had lived. Similarly, when someone asked why he and Atef never laughed, al-Shehi retorted, "How can you laugh when the people are dying in Palestine?" Ziad Jarrah was born on May 11, 1979, in Masra, Lebanon. Jarrah came from an affluent family and attended private Christian schools. Like Atef and Ramzi bin al-Shibh and al-Shehi, Jarrah aspired to pursue higher education in Germany. In April of 1996, he and a cousin enrolled at junior college in Greifswald in northeastern Germany. There, Atef met and became intimate with Azel Senguin, the daughter of Turkish immigrants who was preparing to study dentistry. Even with the benefit of hindsight, Jarrah hardly seemed a likely candidate for becoming an Islamic extremist. Far from displaying radical beliefs when he first moved to Germany, he arrived with a reputation for knowing where to find the best discos and beaches in Beirut and in Greifswald, and was known to enjoy student parties and drinking beer. Although he continued to share an apartment in Greifswald with his cousin, Jarrah was mostly at Senguin's apartment. Witnesses interviewed by German authorities after 9/11, however, recall that Jarrah started showing signs of radicalization as early as the end of 1996. After returning from a trip home to Lebanon, Jarrah started living more strictly according to the Quran. He read brochures in Arabic about jihad, held forth to friends on the subject of holy war, and professed disaffection with the previous life and a desire not to lead the world in a natural way. In September of 1997, Jarrah abruptly switched his intended course of study from dentistry to aircraft engineering at the Technical University of Hamburg-Harburg. His motivation for this decision remains unclear. The rationale he expressed to Senguin, that he became interested in aviation since playing with toy airplanes as a child, rings somewhat hollow. In any event, Jarrah appeared already to have Hamburg contacts by this time, some of whom may have played a role in steering him toward Islamic extremism. Following his move to Hamburg that fall, he began visiting Senguin in Greifswald on weekends, until she moved to the German city of Bochum 1 year later to enroll in dental school. Around the same time, he began speaking increasingly about religion, and his visits to Senguin became less and less frequent. He began criticizing her for not being more religious enough and for dressing too provocatively. He grew a full beard and started praying regularly. He refused to introduce her to his Hamburg friends because he told her they were religious Muslims, and her refusal to become more observant embarrassed him. At some point in 1999, Jarrah told Senguin that he was planning to wage a jihad because there was no greater honor than to die for Allah. Although Jarrah's transformations generated numerous quarrels, their breakup inevitably was followed by reconciliation. In Hamburg, Jarrah had a succession of living accommodations that he apparently never resided with his future co-conspirators. It is not clear how and when he became part of Atta's circle. He became particularly friendly with Ramzi bin al-Shibh after meeting him at the Al-Quds Mosque in Hamburg, in which Jarrah began attending regularly in late 1997. The worshippers at this mosque featured an outspoken, flamboyant Islamist named Mohammed Zamar, a well-known figure in the Muslim community and to German and U.S. intelligence agencies by late 1990s. Zamar had fought in Afghanistan and relished any opportunity to extol the virtues of violent jihad. Indeed, a witness had reported hearing Zamar press Ramzi bin al-Shibh to fulfill his duty to wage jihad. Moreover, after 9/11, Zamar reportedly took credit for influencing not just bin al-Shibh, but the rest of the Hamburg group. In 1998, Zamar encouraged them to participate in jihad and even convinced them to go to Afghanistan. Owing to Zamar's persuasion or some other source of inspiration, Mohammed Atef, Ramzi bin al-Shibh, Mohammed al-Shihi, and Ziad Jarrah eventually prepared themselves to translate their extremist beliefs into action. By late 1999, they were ready to abandon their student lives in Germany in favor of violent jihad. This final stage in their exclusion toward embracing Islamic extremism did not entirely escape the notice of the people around them. The foursome became core members of a group of radical Muslims, often hosting sessions at their Marienstrasse apartment that involved extremely anti-American discussions. Meeting 3 to 4 times a week, the group became something of a sect whose members, according to one participant in the meetings, tended to deal only with each other. Atta's rent checks for the apartment provide evidence of the importance that the apartment assumed as a center for the group, as he would write on them the notation Dar al-Ansar, or House of the Followers. In addition to Atta, bin al-Shibh, Shehi, and Jarrah, the group included other extremists, some of whom who would attend al-Qaeda training camps and in some instances would help the 9/11 hijackers as they executed the plot. Saeed Bahaji, son of a Moroccan immigrant, was the only German citizen in the group. Educated in Morocco, Bahaji returned to Germany to study electrical engineering at the Technical University of Hamburg-Harburg. He spent 5 months in the German army before obtaining a medical discharge and lived with Mohammed Atef and Ramzi bin al-Shibh at 54 Marienstrasse for 8 months between the months of November of 1998 and July of 1999. Described as an insecure follower with no personality and with limited knowledge of Islam, Bahaji nonetheless professed his readiness to engage in violence. Atef and bin al-Shibh used Bahaji's computer for internet research, as evidenced by documents and letters seized by German authorities after 9/11. Zakaria Essabar, a Morocco citizen, moved to Germany in February of 1997 and to Hamburg in 1998 where he studied medical technology. Soon after moving to Hamburg, Escobar met Ramzi bin al-Shibh and the others to a Turkish mosque. Escobar turned extremist fairly suddenly, probably in 1999, and reportedly pressured, once accompanied with the others, and acquaintance with physical force to become more religious. He also grew a beard and compelled his wife to convert to Islam. Escobar's parents were said to have made more repeated but unsuccessful efforts to sway him from this lifestyle. Shortly after the 9/11 attacks, he would travel to Afghanistan to communicate the date for the attacks to the al-Qaeda leadership. Munir el-Motassadegh, another Moroccan, came to Germany in 1993, moved to Hamburg 2 years later to study electrical engineering at the Technical University. A witness had recalled Motassadegh saying that he would kill his entire family if his religious beliefs demanded it. One of Motassadegh's roommates recalled him referring to Hitler as a good man and organizing film sessions that included speeches by bin Laden. Motassadegh would help conceal the Hamburg group's trip to Afghanistan in late 1999. Abdelghani Mouzadi was a Moroccan arrived in Germany in the summer of 1993 after completing university courses in physics and chemistry. Mouzadi studied in Dortmund, Bochum, and Münster, Germany, before moving to Hamburg in 1995. Mouzadi described himself as a weak Muslim, but when he was home in Morocco, much more devout when he came back to Hamburg. In April of 1996, Mouzadi and Motassadegh witnessed the execution of Mohammed Atef's will. During the course of 1999, Mohammed Atef and his group became ever more extreme and secretive, speaking only in Arabic to conceal the content of their conversations. When the 4 core members of the Hamburg cell left Germany to journey to Afghanistan later that year, it seemed unlikely that they already knew about the plane's operation. No evidence connects them to al-Qaeda before that time. Witnesses have attested, however, that their pronouncements reflected ample predisposition toward taking some action against the United States. In short, they fit the bill for bin Laden, Mohammed Atef, and Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. The available evidence indicates that in 1999, Mohammed Atef, Ramzi bin al-Shibh, Marwan al-Shehi, and Ziad Jarrah decided to fight in Chechnya against the Russians. According to Ramzi bin al-Shibh, a chance meeting on a train in Germany caused the group to travel to Afghanistan instead. An individual named Khalid al Masri approached Ramzi bin al-Shibh and Marwan al-Shehi because they were Arabs with beards, Ramzi bin al-Shibh thinks, and struck up a conversation about jihad in Chechnya. He told them to contact Abu Musab in Duisburg, Germany. Abu Musab turned out to be Mohammed al-Slahi, a significant al-Qaeda operative who even then was well known to the United States and German intelligence. However, to basically stop at this article note in the 9/11 Commission, this part of the 9/11 Commission that I read about Mohammed al-Slahi and Khalid al-Masri is false. Mohammed al-Slahi was found innocent of all the charges. He had never told Ramzi bin al-Shibh about going to Afghanistan. He had never met Mohammed Atef, he had never met Marwan al-Shehi, and he had never met Ziad Jarrah. He had met Ramzi bin al-Shibh, but only for a day, and he didn't know about the plans to go to Afghanistan. He didn't know about the plans for the planes operation. He just let him stay there in his house for one day. Khalid al-Masri did not approach Ramzi bin al-Shibh, nor Marwan al-Shehi, nor did he connect him to Mohammed al-Slahi. The problem here is now there's a big hole between the Hamburg cell and their connection to Afghanistan. Now, this is a huge gap in the story because now there is no direct connection, now that we know that this part of the 9/11 Commission is false through the evidence that came out years later, is that how does the Hamburg cell make the connection to Afghanistan and the meeting of bin Laden and Khalid Sheikh Mohammed? The hole still exists. So I just wanted to basically put that there in the story because the rest of what was said in the 9/11 Commission report about Afghanistan now is false. Now, we're not going to basically say that the rest of the 9/11 Commission is false because we don't have that evidence yet. But this part of the chapter under going to Afghanistan, in the chapter 5, the Hamburg Contingent, going to Afghanistan, that part we can stop reading because it is false. In early 2000, Mohammed Atef, Ziad Jarrah, and Ramzi bin al-Shibh returned to Hamburg. Jarrah arrived first on January 31st, 2000. According to Ramzi bin al-Shibh, he and Mohammed Atef left Kandahar together and proceeded first to Karachi, where they met Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and were instructed by him on security and on living in the United States. Marwan al-Shehi apparently had already met with Khalid Sheikh Mohammed before returning to the United Arab Emirates. Atef returned to Hamburg in late February, and Ramzi bin al-Shibh arrived shortly thereafter. Al-Shehi's travel took him to the United Arab Emirates, where he acquired a new passport and a U.S. visa. Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and one or more other destinations he arrived at. Al-Shehi also returned to Germany, possibly sometime in March. After leaving Afghanistan, the hijackers made clear efforts to avoid apparently appearing radical. Once back in Hamburg, they distanced themselves from conspicuous extremists like Mohammed Haydar Zamar, whom they knew attracted unwanted attention from the authorities. They also changed their appearance and behavior. Atef wore Western clothing, shaved his beard, and no longer attended extremist mosques. Ziad Jarrah also no longer wore a full beard, and according to Seguin, acted much more the way he had when she first met him. And when Shehi, while still in the United Arab Emirates in January 2000, held a belated wedding celebration, he had been married in 1999, a friend of his was surprised to see that he had shaved off his beard and was acting like his old self again. But Jarrah, apparently his efforts to appear less radical, did not completely conceal this transformation from his Lebanese family, which grew increasingly concerned about his fanaticism. Soon after Jarrah returned to Germany, his father asked Jarrah's cousin, a close companion from boyhood, to intercede. The cousin's ensuing effort to persuade Jarrah to depart from the path he was taking proved unavailing. Yet Jarrah clearly differed from the other hijackers in that he maintained much closer contact with his family and continued his intimate relationship with Azio Seguin. These ties may have well caused him to harbor some doubts about going through with the plot, even as late as the summer of 2001. After leaving Afghanistan, the four began researching flight schools and aviation training. In early January of 2000, Ali Abdul Aziz Ali, a nephew of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who also was known as Amr al-Baluchi, living in the United Arab Emirates, would become an important facilitator in the plot. Used al-Shehi's credit card to order a Boeing 747-400 flight simulator program and a Boeing 767 flight deck video, together with attendant literature. Ali had all these items shipped to his employer's address. Jarrah soon decided that the schools in Germany were not acceptable and that he would have to learn to fly in the United States. Bin al-Shibh also researched flight schools in Europe and in the Netherlands. He met a flight school director who recommended flight schools in the United States because they were less expensive and required shorter training periods. In March of 2000, Mohammed Atef emailed 31 different U.S. flight schools on behalf of a small group of men from various Arab countries studying in Germany who, while lacking prior training, were interested in learning to fly in the United States. Atef requested information about the cost of the training and potential financing. Before seeking visas to enter the United States, Mohammed Atef, Mahmoud Ashi, and Ziad Jarrah obtained used passports, each claiming that his old passport had been lost. Presumably, they were concerned that the Pakistani visas in their old passports would raise suspicions about possible travel to Afghanistan. Al-Shayhi obtained his visa in January 18th of 2000, Mohammed Atef on May 18, 2000, and Ziad Jarrah on May 25th of 2000. Bin al-Shib's visa request was rejected, however, as were his 3 subsequent applications. Ramzi bin al-Shib proved unable to obtain a visa, a victim of the generalized suspicion that visa applicants from Yemen, especially young men applying in another country, might join the ranks of undocumented aliens seeking work in the United States. Before 9/11, security concerns were not a major factor in visa issuance unless the applicant already was on the terrorist watch list, and none of these 4 men were. Concerns that Ramzi bin al-Shib intended to emigrate to the United States doomed his chances to participate firsthand in the 9/11 attacks. Although bin al-Shib had to remain behind, he would provide crucial assistance from abroad to his co-conspirators. Once again, the need for travel documents dictated al-Qaeda's plans.